I'm Reese Davies. And I'm David Zientek, and we are here interviewing Irene Zientek. It's being videoed by Zach Fisher on May 15th, 2018 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Okay, Irene, where and when were you born?
I was born in Cudahy, Wisconsin, September 21st, 1926.
When did you first move to Milwaukee?
I'm not sure because I was a little baby. Maybe I was a year or 2 years old. I don't remember exactly when we moved to Milwaukee.
Can you describe your first home in Milwaukee?
My first home, it was a small, like a little bungalow. It had, I don't remember how many how many bedrooms there were, but we had a kitchen downstairs, and then we had like a dining room and a living room, and we didn't have any, didn't have no bathtub. We just had probably a toilet and a sink, and then we had a yard. We had a yard, and we had a nice neighborhood, and we weren't very far from school, and because when we went to school, we went to St. Adalbert's, and that was not too far from us because we lived on Grand Street between 19th and 20th Street, and then we had our grocery stores. We had grocery stores on each corner of our street because in our house we didn't have no refrigerators at that time. We had ice boxes, and then we'd have to order ice, and we'd, just like you see on the city of Milwaukee, that's how it was. You had a sign, and then when you wanted to ice, you'd put the sign in the window, and the man would deliver ice to you, and that's how we kept our food cold. And what else should I say? And then we didn't have no televisions at that time. Of course, we had a radio, and that's how we would listen to our stories that we had, or things that we watched, which we weren't very interested in at that time. And well, then we had friends that lived in the neighborhood. That's what we went with, friends that lived across the street or next door by us, and things like that. So how else should I elaborate this?
Well, how about who lived in your house with you? Could you describe your family?
Oh, my family, yes. I had 3 older brothers, and I had one older sister and one younger sister. I was a middle girl. We had 3 boys and 3 girls. And I was a middle girl, and my brothers were older at that time, and we lived there. Should I say about the Depression at that time? Because I don't know how old was I when the Depression. I must have been about 7 years old or something like that. The Depression, and then my father lost his job, and everybody else lost their job. And then the government had an organization or a program that was called WPA, and that's where my father worked. So that's where they started the Whitnall Park. He used to work over there. That's how they started up all the flower beds and everything, and that's where he worked, because that's where we received money for it. And then also in the Depression, they gave you food, but you had to go pick up the certain food that you got. And we didn't have a car, so we would go with a coaster wagon, and then we travel, I don't know how long, far away. It would be quite a way from where we lived to pick up the things that we had. And everybody everyone like in our class were in the same situation because everybody was affected by the Depression. And we never had a car, so any place we had to go, we had to walk. Or can't remember when the streetcars came, what year they came to Milwaukee, that I remember. It must have been later on, but that's how we got to school, or we went to church, or if we went to go visit a friend, or if we went to visit a relative, we had to walk because we had no car.
So talking about your first neighborhood that you lived in, could you describe it? Like, what kind of people lived in there? How was the neighborhood? How did you view the neighborhood?
Well, the neighborhood, I thought, well, it was a nice neighborhood as far as I was concerned because it wasn't anything fancy. The people that lived next door, it was a bigger house than we had, and there were houses across the street. Maybe those were bigger houses than what we had, but the people were all nice, and that's where our friends were. And so then that's how we played. We didn't have no video games or anything like that. We used to just play games or listen to the radio or play cards or tell stories. That's what we would do. Like in the evening when after school was, that was our recreation. We'd play right in our neighborhood. We could play on the street because there weren't very many cars out there.
Mm-hmm. So what grade school did you attend, and what was that like for you?
It was St. Adalbert's. It was a Catholic grade school, and that wasn't too far from us. And it was, they had nuns, and I can't remember how many children were in, or how many pupils were in a class, but we had regular classes, subjects, math. I can't remember if we had science or history. I'm sure we had things like that, but that's what we all had. And then you could come home for your lunch because you lived close to the school, so you could come right home to eat your lunch and then go back to school. And then we'd have recess on the playground. Mm-hmm. And that's where our recreation was too, because we didn't really live next to a park, but that's where they would play. They'd play baseball. The boys would play baseball, or I remember they didn't have no swings at that time, but they had like a monkey bar that you climb, and that was the only recreation that they had over there.
So what were some of the religious practices that were implemented in your household when you were growing up?
What was religious? Well, we went to church every day. I mean, not every day. We went to church every Sunday. And we had, I'm sure my mother had a holy water fountain. And I can't remember. I think we went to church every day with the grade school. And I don't know, we didn't say any prayers before meals or after meals. That wasn't implanted with us, but I wish we would have had it, but it didn't. But my parents were very religious. They'd go to church and they'd go to extra service and things like that. So, and then we had crucifixes and holy pictures around and pictures in our house at that time too. So.
So what were the demographics like of the South Side when you were living there at the time? The kind of people that lived there?
Well, it seemed as if
were they mostly Polish?
Yeah, it seemed as if they were mostly Polish because, in fact, Donna, Roger's wife Donna, her father, his parents, they lived not too far from us, across the street over there. So most of the people were Polish. I mean, we didn't talk Polish because just because we were. My parents were born in the United States. In fact, I think my grandfather might have been even born here in the States. But Grandpa, my husband's parents, they came from Poland. But my parents were born here, I think they were born in Milwaukee. I'm not sure.
So tell me a little bit about your high school experience. What high school did you attend, and how was that like?
Oh, well, the high school I attended was a parochial high school also because I originally wanted to go to be a nun, but my father said if I went for a nun, he didn't want me to come back home because his sister did that, and it was kind of not something that you should do, so I never went. So I went to Catholic high school then, and that was called St. Stanislaus at that time. It's on 6th and Mitchell Street. The school building is still there, but I don't know what kind of school they have there. And it was a nice school. It wasn't very big, and you knew a lot of, students, and you took your regular class. They had nuns as teachers. They had Notre Dame nuns, and so you took the regular classes like you do now, math and history, geography, and science, some science. I don't think we had I can't remember if we had a science lab. I don't know. We used to have biology, I know, or geometry, but I don't know if we had any science labs or anything like that I can't recall.
So when you were in high school, did you have any aspirations besides being a nun that you wanted to do when you got out of high school?
No, I didn't. Just would go out and get a job. That was the thing that you're going to do. You learn, like typing, that you learn typing. So then when I graduated, I got a job at it was called the transport company. That was the company that would operate the streetcars that we had. That's what we had. Our type of transportation was a streetcar. You went on a streetcar if you wanted to go someplace. And then that's where we went. So then I didn't, that's the only thing that I wanted to do, is go make some money so I could have some money and get some nice things too in my life. And then during World War II, they had like savings bonds, and you could give your money, get a savings bond, and then it would accumulate interest on that. And I remember, I was out of high school at that time. I had a cousin that wanted to go see another cousin of mine that was a priest, and he was out in Boston. And so because I was saving these savings bonds, I cashed some in order for me to get the money to go to Boston. So we went to Boston then to visit my cousin that was a priest. He was a priest. He was in a Franciscan order, but then after many years, and he went into the secular part of priesthood, like parish priests and stuff like that. So that was my farthest travel that I did when I was young.
So talking back about the streetcar, I know that you mentioned, how popular was that back when you were younger?
Oh, it was nice. It was nice. Well, then after the streetcars, and I can't remember how long ago after that, then they had like buses, and they had buses. I remember you'd get a pass, and you'd pay so much money for the pass, so then you could use it any time for that week. And I remember, as something for us to do, we'd go on the bus and go from one end of the line to the other and then come back. That was our Sunday afternoon excursion. That was something for us to do on Sundays.
So I know that you mentioned World War II and the savings bonds. About that, how did the World War II impact the daily life in Milwaukee, in your opinion? Do you have any stories or experiences with that?
I have 3 brothers that went into the service. One brother went into the Army. He was into the 82nd Airborne Division. He was in a platoon section, and my other brother went into the Marines, and he was in Guam. And my 3rd brother went into the Navy. And my oldest brother was wounded when we had, what was that big invasion that we had? Can't remember I can't remember what it was, but he was wounded. He was a paramedic. He would help the men that were hurt, and he would, almost like a doctor, I mean, he had to treat them for their wounds and stuff like that. And he got shrapnel hit, and then they notified us. And I remember some servicemen coming and announcing to us that my brother was hurt, but he didn't die. He just had a lot of shrapnel in his body, and then he came out of the service.
So in Milwaukee, how was the daily life sort of impacted by World War II? What changed in your life back at home because of World War II?
like I says, during the war, we had rations. So we had certain foods that they rationed for us because there wasn't enough or we couldn't get it imported or something. I remember one was sugar, that we couldn't get sugar. And I don't know so much about gasoline. Well, there weren't very many cars on the road, so I suppose that wasn't a big demand for it. And then our home was heated with coal. We would get coal, tons of coal in our house, and then that's what we had. We'd only have one big, like a pot belly stove, and that was the stove that heated the whole house. And so then I was already in high school when the World War I came, and I remember coming down the street, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and that's when I found out that Pearl Harbor was bombed. And then everybody, of course, everybody wanted to go into the service because they wanted to protect their country.
So obviously Milwaukee is known for having a large German population. How were the Germans treated, and how did the Polish on the south side view the Germans during that time?
Well, I didn't have much contact with any people that were German, and if I did, I didn't have anything against them because of German. Some people did, but I didn't. That didn't enter my mind that, you don't talk to somebody because they're German, So I treated them well, but I didn't know. I mean, our family wasn't that way. We had everybody that was Polish. I didn't have too many Germans, except when I got married. Then my husband's brother married a German girl, and she was a very nice woman. But his parents were, I don't know if you'd say they were against her because she was German or what. I don't know, but she was a very nice woman, even though she was German. So that didn't affect me.
So after World War II in Milwaukee, how did the attitude change in the city, and how did your life change after World War II?
Well, that was World War II. Let's see, that was in 1944. I graduated from high school in 45. So, I guess jobs were more plentiful. And during the war, there were a lot of jobs because they had a lot of factories open for making ammunition and things like that. But I didn't work in I did work in high school, but not in no factory or anything like that. So it was probably more prosperous than what it was before.
So what did you do after you graduated high school?
What did I do when I graduated from high school? First, I went to, I got a job at the transport company. I worked as a typist. I typed, I don't know how long I worked there, but I remember during that time we had that big snowstorm, and then everything stopped in the city, and even the streetcars and nobody had any transportation. If you wanted to go any place, you had to walk. So in order to clear it up, we didn't have, I don't know how long it took to clean the streets up. That I don't remember, but I know that there were big piles of snow all over.
So after high school, talking about your jobs, what was your experience working at the transport company?
Oh, well, I enjoyed working there because I was a typist there, and I worked with a woman that I met that went to the same high school I did, but she graduated later than I did, and we became friends. And we never really went out as friends or go to any places or anything, but when we got married, we talked to each other every week on the telephone. For I don't know how many years we did that, until she became sick, and now I miss her phone calls. And then after that, then I got a job at the emergency hospital. It was like not a secretary, just a receptionist. Like when the people would come in for needs for the emergency, then you'd have to probably get all the information and everything. And there was a black lady that worked with me, and she was very nice, and she knew how to handle a lot of these cases that would come in. And it would be kind of sad to see a lot of the things that would come in there and the things that were happening. So there were things going on at that time too, just like today. And then after that, then I met my husband to be, or my friend before I became his wife, and he's the one that got me a job at Allen Bradley. So I worked there, and I was a typist again, and not long after that, we met in January. We were engaged in May, but we got married the following May. And then at Allen Bradley, when you were a married lady, and if you were pregnant, you couldn't work there anymore. That was one of their rules, and things changed now. And I liked working over there because they had a lot of things for the employees. They used to have put like a program, or they had their own orchestra, and it was all employees of the company that were in this orchestra, and then they had singers, and then they'd have programs. And then you could go, they'd play like during the lunch hour for the employees, but then like once a year or so they'd have a program that everybody could come and see. And then you enjoyed that. So it was and then they had like a dance with it. They had like this program that the orchestra would play and singers would sing, and then after that then they'd have a dance. So it was like a get together that everybody enjoyed doing. So then I didn't, because I didn't go out with too many boyfriends, didn't have too many boyfriends, and what else should I say? And then I met Pete, because after the war, then all the boys wanted to go out and have always fun and stuff, and then they always used to meet at this one bowling alley, and that's where my brother used to go to. So then that's how we went. Used to go with him because I didn't go out with anybody, and then that's how we got acquainted with all these people that we bowled with, and so we had fun. We like once a week maybe we bowled or something like that, and we had fun. And so then after that, I know there was one friend of ours that his name was Stanley, and he was always a matchmaker. So he was the one that kind of persuaded Pete that he should ask me to go out. So that's how I went out with him then. And so like I says, we went out for quite a couple of months, and then we got engaged, and then we waited a whole year before we got married. And and then, like I says, going back to my youth, childhood, and stuff like that, I have to say what we did as children or going to grade school. We used to have just friends around our house because we couldn't go traveling anyplace else, and then we'd play on our porch in the evening. That was our entertainment, playing on porch. We'd play jacks, or we'd play cards or something, or we'd play kick the can or something like that. On the road we could go because there weren't very many cards there, but there was one lady in the neighborhood that she didn't like the kids. You know, when you have tag, you got to go by the post and say, you got to close your eyes, somebody's got to find something or something, and she didn't like that. We would use her post over there, so one time she went and she put all lard on that post so we wouldn't use her post, because she didn't like the kids running around her neighborhood, around by her house, because she was, I don't know, she was all by herself, I can't remember. She didn't have any children, and so then that's what we used to do for entertainment. to go around, or like I says, go on a playground. The boys would go to they had playgrounds, mostly like by schools, and then that's where they play baseball and things like that. Football was in the air, but not too much. The baseball there was, the baseball, they'd play baseball and kick the can and tag and things like that. And then, like I says, we used to play our games or tell stories, and that's what we do for our entertainment in the evening, because we couldn't go out late at night. And then going back even farther is our grocery stores. We didn't have all these grocery stores, these big stores that they have nowadays. We had a grocery store on each of our corners, and the reason we had these grocery stores so close to us, because you almost had to go to the grocery store once every day, because you only had this ice box, because it only could hold only so much. Didn't have no frozen meat or anything like that, so you had to go every day almost to go get ingredients for what you needed to make for the dinner. Mm-hmm. And of course my mother would do a lot of baking. We didn't have no cookies like they do now, all packed up. You did your own baking, and then she'd do a lot of baking. She would do a lot of yeast baking, and now when I look back at it, I says yeast baking doesn't have very much sugar like some of these other cookies and donuts and things have. And so and then we we didn't have no bathtubs in our house either. We had like a big round tub, and then they'd put water in there, and that's where we'd take our bath. And then we didn't have no furnace. We had just this big pot belly stove, and that was by coal, and in one room it was. So then you had in the morning when you were dressed up to go to school, that's where you hung around that pot belly stove so that you could get warm. So that's why we had to have all these heavier, like these feather quilts and things like that, because the whole house wasn't heated all. And so that's what we had. And like I said, everybody was in the same situation that you were, so nobody thought that somebody else had something better than you did. And what else should I say?
I can ask you a question. So what were the roles of your parents growing up? What did they do around the house? Did your dad have a job? Did your mom have a job? How was that?
Well, my mother never had a job, but my mother, like I said, she did a lot of baking for us, and I had my 3 older brothers, and then I didn't realize that. I talked to my sister, and she said that my oldest brother had to quit school to go to get a job so he could help, give money for the family at that time too. And my father was a very simple man, but he was a very quiet man, but he was a hard worker. And like I says, he worked in a factory. Then after the Depression, and he got a job in a factory. And of course, they only had like a 6th grade education, so they didn't have much education. And I remember, not that I'm smart or anything, but he used to work like on a machine or something, so then he had to keep track of his hours and things like that. And I used to help him help him with his times and things like that, because he didn't know how to do it. Or when my brothers were in service, I was the one that would go write them letters, and I wish that I would have saved some of the letters that I received from them, and maybe would have been knowledgeable and would help somebody else.
Back then, was it common for fathers of supporting families to have jobs in factories, and what kind of factories were the most popular back then that people would work in?
I don't know it was like he worked on some kind of machine, but what kind of factory was that's what they had, is most of the jobs were factories. I don't think too many men worked in offices or anything, unless you were a doctor or you were a lawyer. But at that time, I don't even remember can't even remember when I was younger if we went to a doctor. We would be examined at the school. You know, they would have a school nurse, and then they'd examine your eyes or something like that. But we never went to doctors like they do now. You know, like you go for a checkup every year and stuff like that. We never went to the doctor. And well, my father, because he was a simple man, he worked, but he loved gardening. He liked gardening. We used to have a garden in the back of our house, and then you know, he grew different things, and then maybe my mother would can preserve, you know, like tomatoes or things like that she would do, you know, so we could have it for some meal or something. And 'cause everything was very, very simple because you didn't have too much money to go around. Everything was, I mean, everything was cheaper, but you got low wages also. I don't remember what the wages were, but, you know, so you had to try to cut corners, so that's what you do. They even would make their own bread. They wouldn't have bread like that on the shelves. You made your own bread. And like I said, you go to the store real often because you couldn't keep anything too long because you didn't have no freezers. And then we used to have a milkman that used to come to our house and deliver milk. And then another thing is about the news, where we only have a radio, and that's where we listen to the radio for news or internet information, or there'd be some stories, and maybe you'd follow a story or something, and then when something major would happen, the newspaper companies would put extra papers out, and so then the boys would be calling newspapers. They'd be going around the street and selling the newspapers, you know, to read all about what's happened, what this incident happened. That's what they would do, and so
I know you mentioned that your father gardened. He had a garden.
Mm-hmm.
Was that popular during World War II as a kind of way to get food without wasting too many rations?
Yes. That's a lot of. Everybody had they'd call them a victory garden. So they'd have a garden, and then they grew a lot of different things, and then they'd preserve them. So then they would have them for, you know, for later on to eat, you know, because things were scarce too at that time. When World War II. And I remember not so much at school, but I remember that we had drills, not like fire drills, they call like air raid drills, that we had to practice to go in our basement in case we were going to be bombed, because we didn't know if we were going to be bombed or not at that time. And so it was a kind of rough time, and kind of a sad time that all these young men had to go to the service, because if you didn't join the service, you were drafted. And so what else have you got, David?
Was it scary at the time when they did all those drills for bombs? How was the mood in Milwaukee during that time?
Well, I'd say it was kind of sad. You know, you didn't know what was going to happen, if they really were going to come by us or not. You know, so it was quite a few years that it went, that the war lasted. I mean, and then, you know, so then if everybody had, those that had brothers or sons in war or something, they had like a plaque, or it's not a plaque, but like a flag or something, and then they'd put, like, they have a star, how many people from your family were in service, and then you would display it in your window. And then, so then you knew how many people were in the service, or quite a few of them already. I mean, like I said, the three of my brothers went, and I know from Pete's side, well, he couldn't go to the service, so he worked in foundry.
Why couldn't he go to the service?
Because he was 4F, because he had some health issues. He had one leg was shorter than the other, and he had a hernia or something, and they wouldn't take him into service. So then when he was a young man and he worked in a foundry, and that's where he almost lost his hand because he got it cut in a machine. He got it caught in a machine. So that was kind of, I don't know him at that time, but that's what happened to him. But he was very upset because all his brothers could go to service and he couldn't go. So he couldn't help out, but then he helped out over here as much as he could because he worked in a foundry, because that's where the ladies were going. They had Rosie the Riveter. The ladies would go and work in the factories. But I never worked in a factory. I only worked I worked in the office. I never worked in a factory. And so I was a clerk in a store, and that's about it. And then at the transport company and then like I said, the transport company, that when that big snowstorm was and they stopped all the transportation and people had to just walk by themselves or get wherever they wanted to get during that storm. And the mounds were so big that if you had a car and you had to go, it was scary because you don't know when you're going to pass this corner if there's going to be a car coming at you or not, because they were so. And I think it took a while because I'm sure the city didn't have as much equipment to clean up the streets like they did now, and so that I mean, and then you didn't go to school or anything because everything was shut down. The whole city was shut down because you couldn't maneuver. Everybody had to take care of their own little place to clear it up. So.
During the war, did they have to implement a curfew for you, and how was that in the city of Milwaukee?
I can't remember, David, if they had a curfew or not. I don't remember if they had a curfew. Well, it wouldn't, if it was, I don't remember them having a curfew. The only thing I can remember is the fire drill that they had, and then they had a lot of things, shortage on different products, and then that you couldn't buy them because they didn't have enough or you weren't entitled to have it. They had to feed the soldiers and that for the people, so that didn't really affect me. And we didn't go out that much anyway during the war because there wasn't too much going on, because almost all the boys were gone, and so you just did what you could do.
So jumping back ahead to your jobs, is this prior to World War II when you worked in the emergency hospital? Was that prior to World War II?
Let's see. World War II started in 41? It must have been during the war. It was during the war. I think I must have been there, because the war lasted to about 45 or something like that. No, maybe it was after the war that I worked there. Can't remember.
So did the war have any impact on you getting the job at the emergency hospital?
No, I didn't. I didn't have. Just that I think I had to work like a second shift or something like that, and that wasn't, I don't know how I got to work. I must have gone on a streetcar, because that's the only transportation that we had, because that was downtown, and we didn't have no car, and I didn't drive. We didn't have no car, so that's what I must have done, gone on a streetcar. They had streetcars first, and then after a while they had buses. So I can't remember when the streetcars ended and then the buses started. That I can't remember when they did start. So.
About the emergency hospital, what kind of people did you deal with? What experiences did you have there, and where was it located? I'm not sure if it was 35th in Wisconsin. I know it was on Wisconsin Avenue.
And well, the people that I guess you would say there are maybe a lot of minority people that would come over there because they had no place to go for an emergency, so they would come to the emergency hospital. Or if something would happen to them, maybe when they were shot or something, then they'd come over there because they had some shootings too at that time. But I don't know how far it was, you know. But they had so then that's the only place that they could come to. That from at that they had one over here on the south side, but this one was, you know, like in the middle of the city. So then people came from all over there. So
skipping ahead, what do you remember about the civil rights movement in Milwaukee?
well, I know that the Father Grappi was very well known because he would try to help the black people get together and be on the right road. And so then they had that big march, I guess, across 6th Street Viaduct.
16th.
Yeah, is that 6th or 16th? 16th? Oh, 16th Viaduct. And I wasn't involved in it or anything like that, but I know that there were a lot of people that were, that try to help them out. I never had anything against any ones like that. If they treated me nice, I treated them the same way that they, you know, treated me, because I worked at the emergency, like I said, that I worked with this black woman, and she was a very nice person. And just that we when we went to school, we just had all our own kids, like all white kids. We didn't see very many black people at that time because they weren't integrated with us. They didn't come. And if some would come, I'd treat them just as I would treat anybody else. As long as they treat me good. And like I says, I can't think of any like robberies and things like that they have nowadays. We never had anything like that, robberies or breaking into your house or so, that we'd keep your house open all the time. I can remember having the doors open even during the summer because you didn't have no air conditioning, so you'd sleep on a floor because that was cooler on a floor than if you went in your bed. And you'd have the doors open, and it felt safe. Nobody was trying to get somebody else's things. And so I says, and then I know that this neighbor lady across the alley was expecting a baby, so she was worried how she was going to get to the hospital, but I guess everything turned out okay and she got to the hospital. And nobody didn't have anything encountered or no bad experience with it. We just, went along with it, and that's what if anybody wanted to come and live wherever they want to come, I agree with it. That's their prerogative. They want to come if they're willing to work and do things, because that was always the impression that we had, that they never wanted to work. They didn't. So like I says, because we didn't have any black children going to school, so you didn't encounter with them either, because they weren't in our neighborhoods, and because they're mostly all neighborhood kids that went to the schools. Well, high school, that they came from different neighborhoods because that was a different story. So
what was the attitude from Southsiders towards Jim Grappi and the whole civil rights movement? Was there a lot of resentment?
No, I don't think there was resentment. It's just that, they were. If like I says, if I can feel for them. I can feel them. If they're willing to work and do their work and treat people, because some of them didn't treat people like human beings, so then that's why you were more afraid of them. But we were living in this house when that happened, and we didn't have no connection with it or anything, and I never had no protest against it or anything. I kind of felt sorry for them in a way that they, couldn't. But now they're making a little bit more leadway, and they're working hard, and there's a lot of them that are very well educated now, and working hard to get a place in life, and so I go along with it. So I have nothing against them, and when I was younger, yes, maybe when I was very young, yes, I was, but now I don't.
So what did you know about Jim Grappy at the time, and how did people around you feel about him, and also how did your neighbors feel about the whole civil rights movement and Jim Grappy?
Well, I don't know. Nobody really had anything against it, he wanted to better these people's lives, They just try to work with it, but we weren't against it or anything like that. And I think everybody felt the same way, because especially if you worked at a construction company, they would have, black people there, and they would work hand in hand with them because they were willing to do things and do things. So I never had anything, or I had never heard any negative things about it either. It's just that he wanted to make a better life for them, and I can see that he helped them out a lot to bring them closer to having a better life for them than they do now. So.
Can you talk about what sort of segregation was like in Milwaukee? Were there like separate bubblers? How were black people treated differently?
No, I can't remember anything like that, David. That they had separate bubblers. I don't think we had anything like that. I don't remember anything like that. Maybe on the north side, maybe they did, but not on the south side. I don't remember having anything segregated, that only for the white or the black. That I don't know. I don't know of anything like that. So just the only thing that you used to see the black people is when you were going on a bus, or if you were going on a north side or something like that. That's when you would see some black people, but you didn't talk with them, or and you just were kind of like a little fearful because you were afraid that they were going to do something. You were going to hurt you or something. But other than that, I wasn't against them. I was just that a little bit more intimidated. Maybe, I don't know if that's the right word to say, but just didn't.
So, what do you remember about the riots in Milwaukee, and maybe you can speak a little about the curfew and how that was and how that affected you?
Oh, well, I don't know how long the curfew lasted. I don't know how long it lasted. That I can't remember, but it didn't affect me because I was married at that time, and I don't know if the boys, because the older ones, if they remember that, or well, we just abided by it. If that's what they said we should do, then we did that. And so I remember, because I have my doctor. My doctor used to be on 20th and Wisconsin Avenue, and we used to go there, and I never had anything against any of them, if they were black people that came to see him or not. I wasn't ever against them or anything. It's just that we just went along with it. It's just that now I'm glad that they're coming forward and educating themselves and get a better position, and they can go forward more than going back.
So, do you remember anything specifically about the riots that happened?
No, they were more on the north side, weren't they? There weren't any really riots over here on the south side too much that I know of. You see, I don't remember anything about the riots. I remember that time when they had that walk. That I remember that because that was coming coming by us, so I didn't know anybody involved in that or anything. So,
What do you remember about the march with Jim Groppe? Didn't he come to the south side?
yeah, well, he came off of how far in the south side he went. I know he went across that 16th Street Viaduct, so I don't know how far that would have been in that. That's not by my house. That was only up to National, or it wasn't way south. It was just south. It didn't bother me. I mean, I just went along with what they wanted to do. It didn't affect me anything. But maybe the people that were involved in it did, but not me.
So you didn't personally witness the march?
No, I didn't personally witness it. No, because we didn't go see that.
What kind of impact did Dr. Martin Luther King's words have in Milwaukee, and how was the atmosphere in Milwaukee after he was assassinated?
Oh, I think sad. I was sad because he was a man that wanted to improve people's life, and then somebody took his life and wanted to make things better for those people, tried to tell them that what they should do and how they could help themselves and help their families. Because especially the men, it seemed as if the men didn't do their part like the women did, and I think that's what the thing was, that they have to teach them that they have to get jobs and do things like that too, so really didn't affect me anyway or anything, but I was sad. I felt bad that here was a man that wants to try to help the people, and then they do something like that to him. I think his march was helpful, because I think people are doing more to help bring the people together, because nowadays I think they're people are intermarriage now, and you see them in school, and they're getting more educated, and so I think by his work that helped him.
So what was the state of your life during that time? Like, were you married at that time already? What were you, did you have a job?
I was married. No, I didn't have a job. Well, the only time I didn't have a job. I had a job when, this is one thing that happened. My daughter Christine, they had, for the public schools, because we went to grade school, and that was only to 8th grade, and then you had to go to junior high. And then we had a junior high school here and in my backyard, and then they wanted to send Christine to Roosevelt High School. She didn't want to go there. She was afraid. She didn't want to go, so then I got a part-time job. So when I then that's why I sent the younger kids all to Catholic school then, because they had they were telling you what school you should go to. And here we had a school in our backyard, and they transferred her someplace to a different school instead of the neighborhood school. So that affected us. So then I went to work part-time to make money to help pay for the tuitions.
So how were the high schools back in that time? Were they good high schools?
Well, they were good because all the boys went to Boys Tech. Roger, Joe, Mark, and John, they all went to Boys Tech. And that was a very good school, and they had a very good education. And that was pretty segregated. I mean, not segregated, but that had a lot of black.
Integrated?
Yeah, integrated. Well, see, it was all boys,
Yeah.
It was integrated. And that's the school that they went, so it really didn't affect us that much. So that they, and they had a good education. Well, they had a girls' tech too, but our girls didn't go, but the boys went to Boys Tech. The four older ones did, and they liked it. And then then they were telling you what school you should go to.
So moving past the civil rights era in Milwaukee, how did Milwaukee change as a result of the civil rights era, and what sort of changes do you notice in Milwaukee and even in your life in the 70s and maybe even into the 80s?
When did it start that music festival at that water?
Summerfest?
Yeah, Summerfest. How many years is that going? Pretty many years.
Around 50,
yeah.
50 or 60.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
started?
Yeah, that started, and I think that got the people together, and you know, and people had fun, and they did things, and I says, to me, it didn't involve me. I didn't, I just went along with what they ever were doing. So, and like I says, over here, there's people, black people coming here, and it's fine with me. I don't go out that much and don't mingle with them because I don't get out that much. But I think it helped to get the people together a little bit more and get the people to get educated and get a job and
So did you see Summerfest as a kind of community unifier, sort of in that tough time?
Yeah, I think so because everybody likes music, and it kind of got the people together to listen to the music, and they had the different music, so you could have the music that you like, you could listen to the music that you like, and everybody could have a good time, and it didn't make any difference who you were or what you were or what color skin you were or not. You're just out there to have a good time. So I think that was a good thing to bring people together.
What other sort of recreational activities, like parks, different events that were in Milwaukee that you can remember that were sort of impactful?
Well, we always had a 4th of July parade. All the kids would gather around their schools or church, and then we'd march to the park, and then they'd have games and races for the kids, and then then anybody could come and everybody had a good time. And now the parks, I think, go out there for a picnic, or now they have concerts and people go and listen to the concerts. So I think that's a good thing. There's something there for people to enjoy, and they have a little bit of each different things, different. They have rock and roll, they have polka, and they have jazz, and so then they have anybody can come and listen to it, and it's enjoyable. So I think that was a good thing too, that they have these different events at the different parks, and then people all gather and go to it, and that's how everybody gets together.
Were the parks in Milwaukee like popular locations for people to gather and have a good time?
Well, yeah, I think so, because like I said, we have a Jackson Park, that's not far for us. They have a swimming pool, so the children could go swimming. I can't remember when it was open, but it was, that was a place that people could gather, and still now they still have it, and it's not, people still come. I don't know how much they come because I haven't gone for a while, but it was enjoyable evening, nice evening, and if you wanted to bring your dinner, you could bring your dinner, and you could eat there and enjoy and visit some of your other neighbors that you haven't seen. Yeah.
Do you remember the beer gardens they had in the park? How popular were those?
Well, they just started that up now. I don't know how long.
Didn't they have some back then?
I can't remember if they had any. I can't remember if they had any at that time. And I don't remember any beer gardens, David. I don't remember. I don't remember if they had beer gardens at that time, but I know that Whitnall Park, that was always a very popular park. And then another one that was another one that used to like to go see is that the domes. The domes with all the flowers in there, that was always something to go see. Or the zoo, go to the zoo, or go to the parks. And now they have the different beer gardens now, so I guess that's bringing more people together too. Especially the younger people, that they like them, and they can have picnics and things like that. And like I says, they have musical events at different places, and so someplace for somebody to go to get together. So that's another thing, and that's why I think I like the domes, because there's always beautiful flowers in there and beautiful things that you wouldn't see someplace else, other than going to the zoo. Going to the domes.
In your opinion, from the time you were a child, how do you think Milwaukee, its environments, the city, the layout, how do you think that's changed from then until maybe more recently?
Well, when I was young, we didn't have as many cars as we did, and I don't know if people didn't have as much garbage as they do now or what, but I think they're doing a good job right now, because they have a very good garbage collection and recycle thing, which I'm a very recyclable person, and they have sweepers that come and sweep our streets. They come close to the alley, and close to the curbs, and clean the streets, and the plows plow our streets very good, and so I'm thinking by all doing that the environment hopefully is getting better. It's better. We have a little bit more pollution now because of the cars, but because we didn't have that many cars, but as far as and people take care of their lawns and cut their grass and make everything look presentable and beautiful as best as they can, and I think that's a plus too. And then that we have all these beautiful gardens and places to go to enjoy yourself, all these parks, and like the domes and Whitnall Park, and so people can enjoy all of that, and I think that's a plus, where we didn't have that when we were younger. And like I says, because we have more people, we probably have more people, and that's why we have more things that we have to take care of. But I think as a city, I think we do a pretty good job of cleaning everything up and taking care of what we have to take care of.
So just to wrap it up, I know your husband worked at Allen Bradley for a long time. Can you talk to us about the impact that Allen Bradley had on the South Side, and maybe share some stories?
Oh, well, because Allen Bradley started there from the beginning, when two brothers opened the stores, and and gave a lot of people a lot of jobs, and they were very good to their people. And if one brother got a job at Allen Bradley, he could get his other brother, and it was more or less, it was for family oriented, and you could get your friends to go there, and they paid you good money. And another thing that Allen Bradley used to do that was very good, that like when you're the age you are, that you're going to you're going to go to college, you could go get a job at Allen Bradley and work there during the summer, and you would make enough money to pay for your college tuition. That's what Uncle Roger did. And Jim, my nephew Jim, that's a dentist, we were talking about that. They were hired by Allen Bradley, and they got good pay, and then that's why they didn't have education was much cheaper than it is now too. But they were a very big impact, and now they're bought by Rockwell, and I think Rockwell probably does the same thing. Maybe they have more office spaces than they have factories when Allen Bradley does, but Allen Bradley was very good to their employees. And they had parties for the children and parties for the employees, and so they were a very good manufacturer for the city. They were good
You want to talk about the dances?
Oh yeah, then they had an orchestra that they had, and it was all employees, would be employees and singers, and then they'd have this orchestra, and then they'd have a dance, and so that was something for everybody to get together with and enjoy themselves. And then they used to have, they used to call them 10-year parties. All the people that worked there for 10 years could come, and they'd have a dinner, and then they would have a dinner and treated their employees very, very good. So they're a very good manufacturing company for the city. Made the city good and proud to have a company like that in our city.
Okay.